In ancient times, in the year 1235 AD, young women considered witches were captured and taken to be executed in front of all the people. A religious leader, holding the Book of Solomon, uses the knowledge written in it to pass sentence. Some of them, who practiced only simple witchcraft, confess their wrongdoings, but one of the witches, who has one blinded eye, tells the priest that he will burn in hell. However, he is not intimidated and orders them to be hanged for death. The three witches are hung over a bridge and then submerged in the river. The soldiers were leaving, but the priest says that the ordinance of the Book of Solomon demands that they be brought back to receive the holy rites, to ensure they will not return. However, one of the soldiers says he is certain that the three have died, and then he leaves, leaving the priest worried. Later, at nightfall, the priest alone raises the witches and pronounces sacred words for the dead bodies, not fearing the macabre movements of one of them. However, when trying to lift the last one, he lacks strength and ends up being pulled in, falling into the river. Terrified, he tries to escape before the evil takes him to death. The priest runs back to the bridge to search for words that can help him with the witch still in the river, but he doesn't have enough time, as the woman with the malignant spirit jumps from the depths of the river and, using her power, burns the Book of Solomon and finally kills the priest in the same way they attempted to do with them. Many years later, in 1332 AD, during the era of the Crusades, in the Gulf of Edremit, thousands of soldiers prepare for battle. Among them is the knight Bayman and his companion Felson. They joke about who will kill more enemies, and minutes later, the battle begins. Both friends are exceptional soldiers wielding their swords, and their fighting style causes the death of many enemies. Together over the following years, they fought many wars, always emerging victorious from their battles against the enemies labeled as profane. No matter the hour, day, or season, they were ready to wage war for the cause, where those deemed enemies of God were punished with death. In one of the battles, in 1344, Bahman and the army invade the city of Smyrna, and upon entering into confrontation amidst the fog, Bahman does not recognize the enemy and ends up plunging his sword into a woman. He and his comrade realize they have just massacred a defenseless city. The next morning, Bahman confronts the leader sent from the church regarding the atrocity committed by killing women and young people. The church spokesperson says he follows what the voice of God commands him to do, but the knight questions if it is really God who is directing him. There is a brief argument between them, but knowing he cannot lay a hand on the church's envoy, Bahman and his companion leave his presence, stating they will no longer be part of this. A month later, the two head towards the outskirts of Styria. They walk until they find a house. As they approach, they enter seeking shelter, but find no one. However, upon checking the rooms, they discover the couple dead in bed, their bodies covered in blisters. Fearing something worse, they do not stay in the place and subsequently burn the house down. The duo continues their journey until they find a city, where it is under 100 crows. Bahman wants to go to the place to get supplies, but Felson advises against it. However, needing to, they both venture into the city. They see the suffering occurring there, and some devotees make prayers and vows for God to help them rid themselves of the evil. When questioning what is going on, they receive answers from a soldier named Johann, who says this evil is known as the plague, and that it has spread everywhere, killing many people. Johann says there is no cure. Later, while Bahman manages to get horses for them, a young boy wants to help the knight, but ends up dropping his sword, and the seller sees the emblem on the sword. Then, knowing they could be discovered, he calls Felson to leave as soon as possible. As they go to the inn, the knights are surrounded by a group of soldiers, but the duo reacts by knocking the men out. However, the two are surrounded by archers and have no choice but to surrender. They are deemed deserters and must be imprisoned, but a church priest named de Belzac stops them and asks to see Bahman's sword. Seeing the symbol engraved on the weapon, he invites them to another room and takes them to the presence of the church's eminence. The man is in a deplorable state and has been struck by the plague. The priest says that this evil was a curse sent from hell by the witch of darkness, and they have the same imprisoned here in the city. This is not very well accepted by the knights, but the eminence states that the witch must be taken to the monastery of Severick, where the monks have the last copy of the Book of Solomon. That book has sacred words that can destroy the witch and the curses cast by her. Bahman questions why they want the knights, and the Lord says that the church troops have been completely decimated by the plague. The eminence says that Father de Belzac and Knight Johann will accompany them to help them. However, Bayman states that he no longer serves the church, knowing this will have severe repercussions. Both are thrown into prison, where they encounter a woman who does not appear to be a witch. The two knights sit down, and Felsen starts to laugh at how Bayman put them in that situation by what he said to the priest.
I serve the church no more. Did you see the priest's face? Looked like someone pissed at his holy one.
Later, Bayman wakes up hearing crying and observes that the young woman has whip marks. The next morning, he talks to the priest and says they will take the woman to the monastery. Shortly thereafter, they devise a plan and the path they will take. But Johann warns about the road that goes through the forest on the way, saying that men who went there and got lost never returned. Bayman asks if the priest knows of anyone who has made the journey to Severac, and he takes them to Hagamar, who is imprisoned for deceiving people. Bayman offers freedom and forgiveness to Hagamar in exchange for him guiding them to the monks' monastery. The knights go to find the sleeping witch, who the priest says he put a sedative in her food, but as they get closer, she attacks them fiercely. Fortunately, Felsen and Bayman grab her and knock her out. They place her in a cell in the cart and begin their journey. Meanwhile, in the Eminence's room, the doctors finish the treatment, as the man has died. During the journey, Johann questions the priest about the young woman they are carrying, and the priest says that she was found wandering alone, uttering strange words. Johann questions whether that was how they deduced she was the witch, but the priest explains that after 15 days of her arrival, the plague spread in her city, just as in the others she visited. Johann says that in his village, the girl was not seen, but still, the plague reached them, which counters Debelzak's story. The knights converse, and Felsen alerts Bayman that they are being followed, so they prepare an ambush. The knight that follows them comes across only the cart ahead, but is surprised shortly after. Bayman asks who the young man is, and he says his name is Kay, the son of an honorable knight who lived in the church as an apprentice and altar boy. The young man offers his help, and in exchange, he wants the knights to test him so he can be approved as a new knight. Felsen laughs at the young man, who, not liking the insult, retaliates with nasty words. Felsen decides to teach the young man a lesson, and they both fight with their swords. Kay tries to prove that he is ready to join them, but Felsen does not give the young man chances and shows that his experience surpasses him. Bayman stops the fight, and then they decide to leave, taking Kay with them. Later, Bayman brings food to the witch, who calls him over to talk. He questions her if it was the priest who hurt her, and she replies that it was. She asks what they will do with her, since in her village, a simple little girl was accused of being a witch and was thrown into the river for a cruel death. However, she survived, and her end was to be thrown into a bonfire. Seeing fear in the young woman's eyes, Bayman assures her that she will have a fair trial, giving his word that none of those cruel deaths will happen to her. When he returns to the others, Debelzak asks if he spoke to the witch, warning him that he must not listen to her since the witch will try to corrupt them. The first watch is Johann's, but soon the priest comes to replace him. Johann is leaving when the crying young witch begs him not to go, but when he approaches the cart, the woman pulls him towards her, and when the priest goes to help him, she takes his cross and stabs him in the hand. The others run to them, but upon arriving, find that the young woman has escaped. They search for the witch and end up arriving in a village. Suddenly, a woman runs through the village square, and when they surround her, they realize she is not who they are looking for. Seeing someone running to another location, they quickly follow her. They arrive at a trench area with corridors and a small maze. Kay comes across a mass grave, and Bayman and Felsen find another nearby. However, Johann hears what seems to be the voice of his deceased daughter, and hallucinating, he follows it. Unfortunately, no longer seeing reality, calling out his daughter's name, he lunges at the startled Kay, fatally wounding him in the chest with his sword. When the others arrive, Kay explains what happened, saying that the soldier no longer saw him, but spoke the name of a girl. Felsen finds the young woman still attempting to escape while fighting, but Bayman throws her against the walls. The young witch shows she is scared and pleads for them not to take her to the priest. The next morning, the knights and the priest hold a farewell ceremony for Johann. After that, Debelzak tells Bayman that it was the witch who killed his companion and warns him to alert the others to be careful with what they say, for the witch hears and will use each one's weakness against them. The knight does not give much credit to what the priest says and leaves, and then the witch smiles ironically at Debelzak. The group continues their journey and finally arrives at the crossing of the Bridge of the Gorge, but the bridge is worn and may collapse when they are crossing it. Courageously, Behman goes ahead and manages to cross, and then asks the others to cross first with the horses. After that, they prepare to cross the cart with the witch inside and almost fall into the abyss while doing so. Kay is left hanging, but he cannot hold on to the ropes and lets go. Fortunately for him, the young witch catches him by the arm with a strength not normal for a young woman. Minutes later, the group manages to safely bring the cart over before the bridge completely collapses. Finally, they reach the entrance of the forest, and with no other path to follow, they go straight ahead. The forest is covered in dense fog, and they can barely see where they step. Behman says they will camp there until the fog passes. Later, Hagamar wanders through the night armed with a crossbow to kill the witch, fearing that more people will die. Behman and Felsen interrupt him, but soon after, the witch lets out a loud howl, and then wolves can be heard in the distance along with strange noises. Realizing that wolves are approaching, Behman orders them to kill as many as they can. The group is attacked, but they all fight against the beasts until none remain. More howls can be heard, so Behman orders a retreat. Unfortunately, while riding, Hagamar is thrown from his horse and soon surrounded by wolves that are not really normal animals. The pack mercilessly attacks the man and kills him. The next morning, after leaving the forest, Behman grabs the crossbow and wants to shoot the witch, but Debelzak does not allow him to do so. However, he does not care about the priest's desire and knocks him down. However, Felsen stops him and shows him that their destiny is near. Hours later, the group arrives at the entrance of the monastery, but no one welcomes them. Kay enters through a small opening and opens the door for the others to enter. The priest leads them to the chapel, thinking the monks will be there, but in reality, they are all dead due to the plague. Debelzak, hopeless, kneels to plead for mercy from God, but when Behman interrupts him, a monk still lives and completes his prayer. The priest approaches him, and the monk points to the sacred book, then finishes dying. Debelzak looks at the book and tells the others that on the pages of that copy are all the rituals, prayers, and spells used over the centuries to combat the forces of evil. Behman asks if the priest can pronounce the sacred words, and then shortly after we see him leaving the chapel ready to begin the trial. However, the witch begins to speak, saying that for millennia the church has killed her people brutally, but she thanks them because the church itself has caused more deaths than the plague. The priest begins the ritual, but the witch, having wounded his hand, inflicts considerable pain on him. Behman tries to stop her, but she pronounces words said in war, stunning everyone, as it is impossible for a witch to know. Knowing that the young woman is not actually a witch, Debelzak initiates an exorcism ritual. This disturbs the evil within the young woman, who transforms into a more terrifying form and using her power, burns the cart and melts the metal, freeing herself afterward. The evil follows towards the priest to stop him, and the knights cannot stop the enemy. The priest burns the demon with holy water and continues the ritual, but the creature, having wings, flies to another dark part of the monastery. The group then tries to regroup and prepare an attack plan. Behman asks young Kay not to continue, but the young man is determined to follow his oath, even if it could lead him to death. Therefore, Behman decides to consecrate him as a knight of honor. The four then begin the search for the demon, believing it could have escaped at any moment during their journey. But for some reason, it chose to be there in the monastery. They analyze the path they have taken, and the men who wanted to free or even kill her, the demon killed. This leaves them fearful, as they now have to discover what the malignant being planned. Behman goes ahead and uses torches to light the way and observe what the plague has caused to the monks. Meanwhile, outside the monastery, shadowy flying beings emerge from a dense dark cloud and fly over the temple. Unbeknownst to them, a dark being enters the body of one of the dead monks, while the priest discovers that his brothers were copying the Book of Solomon, trying to spread the sacred weapon so that everyone could combat evil. At last, Behman realizes that the demon wants the book, which is why it made the young woman pose as a witch, knowing that she would be taken to those who had the wisdom of Solomon. Debelzak fears that if the book falls into the demon's hands, there will be darkness and eternal dominion of evil over the world. The voice of the malignant being echoes in the library of the chapel, and everyone goes to where it is. It is now fully transformed, having the body of true evil. From the high ceiling, it thanks the group for bringing it there, and when the priest begins the exorcism, it throws objects at the group and then burns the copies of the book. When the knights rise, they realize that the bodies of the monks have disappeared. Soon, they begin to emerge from the darkness, wanting to kill the priest, for his words can weaken the infernal being. They discover that the monks are now under the dominion of evil and even crawl along the ceiling. The knights fight against the enemies and defend the priest from death. Bayman discovers that they need to cut off the heads to destroy the evil within the monks, and knowing this, Felsen and Kay do as Bayman said. Father de Belzac continues to pronounce the sacred words while the others fight against the many possessed monks that emerge. They have a lot of difficulty, and one of the possessed monks ends up wounding Felsen in the back. The knight defeats his opponent, but falls to the ground as if dead. Unfortunately, the unprotected priest is surprised by the demon, who mercilessly breaks his neck. Just when it was about to grab the book, Bayman burns it with holy water, which infuriates the evil. The creature from beyond grips Bayman's neck, saying it will destroy every remnant of the book and anyone who stands in its way. Suddenly, before the worst can happen to Bayman, his still-alive friend Felsen grabs the creature from behind, saving his friend from death. However, the evil is powerful and this time grabs Felsen with its wings, and unfortunately, it burns him until he turns to ashes. When it turns its attention back to Bayman, the young Kay surprises the enemy and continues to proclaim the sacred words of the ritual, which angers the demon. It tries to kill the young man, but Bayman stands in front and drags the creature against the wall, pinning it with 2 blades while Kay proceeds to finish the prayer. The creature wounds Bayman's body, but he manages to hold it until Kay finishes the ritual. Suddenly, the beastly body of the creature begins to burn and dissolve, and finally, the evil is destroyed, freeing the young woman's body. Young Kay approaches Bayman and sees that his wounds are deep and he will not last much longer. Bayman tells Kay to protect the innocent young woman, and unfortunately, he dies. Later, Kay and the young woman take a moment to bid farewell to the knights and the deceased priest. The woman introduces herself as Anna and thanks all the sacrifices made to save her. After the farewell, we see the two riding to return home, and Kay now holds the sacred book, following the monk's wish to spread sacred wisdom to face any evil that may come to this world.